Hello, hello. This is the Digital Loop, Season 2, Episode 17. Back in London for me and back in Warsaw from Ivan. Hi, Ivan. How are you?
Hi, Paul. Great to see you again. Great to see you after our great meetup in Bulgaria.
Yeah, it was the first time for the both of us. It was really good. The videos are not up online. People said it was a conference for those who don't know. We were both at a conference in Sofia in Bulgaria last week called Digitalk 2014, actually. I gave the opening address on day one. Ivan gave a talk on day two. We had great feedback. Some people said, and I know that will be bragging, but some people said they were the two best talks and the two most uploaded talks of the event. So congratulations, Ivan. I see you're smiling down there because you guys might not see it, but I have the monitor telling me what Ivan is doing on the other side. So yeah, it was a very successful event, not only for us, but the entire event was actually very successful. There were more than 1,000 people. We're both very appreciative of what to have been invited by Stefan Granchev, who is one of the main lead organizers of this conference. It was a very good conference. We're not going to go over the entire conference, but what we saw, according to the feedback, there were a few points that we saw that the audience clicked with, and this is a little bit what we're going to talk about today, in between two conferences, because by the way, next week we are again going to be in another conference in the CEE, in Poland. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. So maybe let's get to it. Ivan, what do you want to start with?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I want also to take this opportunity to thank the organizers of Digitalk. We had a fantastic time over there. It was an outstanding event. Well, congratulations to the organizers and to all the audience. You guys were awesome. Some of the things that we were talking about is the fact that at the end of my presentation, I had the opportunity to talk with a lot of people, and a lot of people will. I could tell that my speech, touched a nerve because a lot of people, very often they are aware of these things, but they haven't. They got a different perspective after the way it was presented. We talk about, for example, innovation. Innovation was a word that was repeated very often during the event. But the problem with innovation, the problem is that, and many of us, we talked about Dan Young, he was one of the panelists in the event as well. He mentioned that innovation has become a buzzword, and innovation is just like the next thing that everybody does, but nobody understands what it is. Yeah. And one of the points that I mentioned is that the problem with innovation is that for most organizations is the fact that they think that it's just about small upgrades, right? Or what I call incremental ideas, right? So how to make our product version 1, for version 2 make it smaller or thinner or faster, and then version 3 is going to be even thinner or even smaller or even faster, etc., etc. And what I argue is that if you do that, that's okay. But the problem is that the only thing you do, you might get to a point that you can no longer make the product smaller, faster, slimmer, thinner, just because of your resources or capabilities, or even worse, a different player out of nowhere might come and kick your ass. Yep. Why? Because you are just focused on doing just the small little upgrades. And I don't know if somebody else might come and take your cake and eat it.
So that's actually the theory from, for instance, in the Innovator's Dilemma, which is a book that was written like now maybe 20 years ago. So exactly, it's the point. At some point, your companies, corporations, we are doing incremental upgrades on a current what was an innovation. We go and we like you said, thinner, better, faster, which is great. But like you said, at some point, there's something else coming up completely different, and that just overtakes the market. Part of it is that it's not only because of the technology behind it. So it's not only because you can do something thinner, you can do something faster, and you can do something better. It's also because the needs of the consumer at some point are filled. I mean, at some point, what you have in your hand, even if it's thinner, it doesn't feel for the consumer as something that is completely changing their lives. And this is where suddenly something comes out of the market that is different. It's a different value proposition. It's not the same product, but it can replace parts of the needs of the old product. And more often than not, actually, this comes from a different player. And usually, there's somebody that comes up. So one of the examples, of the very famous example, is obviously digital photography. And first it was photography. Everybody was having a big camera. Polaroid came with these instant photography. You all remember, if you're old enough, at least remember when you had the immediacy of the photo made with a Polaroid camera. And then digital cameras came along. Digital cameras came along, which replaced that, create that same instant feeling, and then suddenly, it's a phone, and it's the same thing. At the end of the day, every time there's a new way that replaces the need is not the camera, and this is where most companies, when they think about it, is like, oh, I'm making a camera. No, you're not making a camera. You're making a way to create a memory for the people, and how do you make that? And this is where innovation comes from. I just want to, and then I'll let you continue. The other thing you said, innovation is a buzzword. I absolutely agree. It's always, it's been a buzzword for, I think, for a few years. The thing is, what is innovation? If you ask 1,000 people, you have 1,000 different answers. I like to say sometimes that innovation, at least for the consumer part, because some innovations we don't see, but innovation is like a cool looking website. You know it when you see it. So go on.
Yeah, no, I mean, going back to your example, I think it's a great example to mention, for example, companies. For me, what's mind-blowing is, for example, on the same year that Kodak filed for bankruptcy, Instagram was acquired by Facebook for $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And the contrast of those, the legacy of a company like Kodak going down while you have a company with 13 people in the form of Instagram, this is just the exact example of what we're talking about. So this is something that I believe organizations, and I'm talking for both startups or executives in big corporations, you guys need to take into consideration this. Another point
before, because I don't want to lose the plot here. Talking about, because I think going on with your camera, and you just mentioned Instagram, I think what you said is also very key, because most, the same thing of the needs of the consumer. When you do something better, if you end up doing a camera that's better, you have more megapixels and more this and more this and more this, and then you're a company of digital cameras, and you're like, but Instagram is not as perfect as my digital camera, and the camera on the iPhone or on Android is not as perfect now. It's getting much better, and this is also what baffles companies, and that certainly they don't understand how another type of product, and this is what I was trying to say before, can overtake them. It's true that Instagram and combined with the quality of the camera of a phone is a different value proposition, but this is where what I was trying to say is that, oh, you know what? People want to create immediate memories and share them. This was the point, and not having 25 billion megapixels to make the greatest picture possible. So I think your example is on point, and thank you for mentioning it, Ivan, is because it shows how companies tend to think about better, faster, and they lose the plot saying, but maybe this is not exactly what people want. The need of the consumer might be somewhere else. So sorry to interrupt you again. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, so I lost you for a second. So go ahead. You have to start again what you're saying, because you were frozen.
Ah, sorry. Great. Just wanted to mention the fact that this is connected with the second point that I noticed, that a lot of people really understood when I mentioned the fact that companies, organizations, startups, entrepreneurs, everybody needs to develop a sense of urgency. The reality today is that these disruptive technologies are a big accelerator of change. And the pace of change is just getting faster and faster and faster. And the problem is that, there is a lot of organizations that are struggling to keep up with this pace. Yep. We mentioned in the last episode about the report written by the New York Times connected with the problems that they're having embracing digital. And time and time again, we see this, that a lot of organizations, I see that very often with clients, they understand that they need to change. They understand that this is important, but they are too slow to move. They are, busy on conf calls, and they are having committee discussions, and they are just taking forever to get things done. So if you want to keep up with this accelerated pace, you need to be willing and you need to be able to be more nimble, more flexible. You need to be more open to experimentation, trying new things. I always say the great thing about digital is that allows you to experiment. If one thing works, keep doing it. If it doesn't work, get rid of it. But you are not going to know if you don't try. And this is something that if you are part of this group of people that understand this new digital reality, awesome. Go for it. This is your time. Move fast because you are ahead of the rest of the people. And if you are part of the people that are struggling, you are part of an organization that is having difficulties embracing this new reality. Well, you need to change your mindset and you need to understand that fast change is the most important thing today. And that's what's happening now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also something we both mentioned in our talks. I think the pace of innovation, and that's actually only natural. And I show this slide when I think it was a number of years that a particular technology, the time of adoption of particular technology, and I used numbers based in the United States. And I think electricity was about 50 years, the radio was 30 years, the PC was about 15 years, the web was 7 years, and now you see new services coming up, appearing on apps and getting like 1 million users immediately, and going like then 10 million users and getting 1 billion users, and you see the pace of change. And then I'm only talking about consumer-facing technologies, but the pace of change seems to be accelerating, which creates this kind of overlap where suddenly everything stacks up. I mean, it used to be, you mentioned change. It used to be, another example, music. For years, people had like LPs and then cassettes, and then the format. I think it's a good analogy. You had a new format coming up every 5 years, every 2, every 1, and now you have everything is digital. And suddenly you have nothing. It has changed the industry completely in terms of content. So I think this pace of innovation is going faster and faster and faster, which is normal because computers are going so much faster. So the algorithm, what you can do with a computer, the computer used to be us. You, Ivan, 50 years ago, you would have been a computer. And I mean, we're still a computer because we're a thinking machine and we're an analytics machine and we think about stuff. But our computer silicon has gone so fast that actually what you can do goes much further. I used a quote in my presentation. I think that what a computer will be doing in the future is actually equal within one set period is equal as fast as what it has been able to do since the beginning of times. Like another example, better to say that is like you have in your pocket more computing power that you had the entire world had in 1945. So when you think about this, you can see that this change is happening and these impacts, of course, corporations. And the other thing, in that sense, with all these innovations piling on top of each other, like suddenly you have everything and you have to decide which way to go, it also means that your very neat boxes of business models are suddenly starting to break apart. You were doing one thing well, and it worked for so long. And this is an example we mentioned, you and me in other episodes here, is now you see one particular industry trying to do something that they never used to do. It's another industry. Banks are becoming telecommunication companies. Telecommunication companies are becoming banks. It's a very easy example to use. You have Google offering Google Wallet. Suddenly it becomes kind of a provider of a way to transact money, and then you have a telco, meaning a telecom, an operator or carrier offering a way to do payments. So you can see all the, and we can go on with many examples, but you can see all these things are overlapping. Is because innovation goes so fast that they all trying in other directions. So you have, there's something I say, it's not about thinking out of the box. There's actually no box. And you have to find ways to actually continue to, what is the need of the consumer, and even not only the need of the consumer, what will be the need of the consumer tomorrow. And you're absolutely right. If you have the right mindset, and it's easier when you're, probably younger. I don't want to make ageism, so don't want to be having something against older generations, because it's not always true. But it's easier when you're younger, but it's also easier when you're smaller in terms of companies, because when you just mentioned committees and conference calls, and the more company grows, the more it goes into processes, and these are the processes that usually impede, makes it impossible to innovate. So it's easier when you're smaller and younger. So what do you want to do? Because you just said you're screwed basically if you're not moving. One way to do it, and it's been proven to be effective in many companies, is to say, you know what? We have to find a new way, a new product, or a new way to do a product, or a new process to do a product, or how do we ideate? You separate, take a bunch of people, maybe both from the outside, from the inside, and you seclude them from the rest of the company. So you know what? You don't have to care about the legacy. We mentioned that a little bit last week when I mentioned this Swedish group, a Norwegian group of newspapers. You can refer to the show last week. They take a group of people and they put them within the company, but they don't have to report to anyone else. They have their own budget, so they don't have legacy. And this famous example, the famous theory we both use, the 70-20-10. So 70% you keep on doing what you're doing and it makes you money. The 20% you try to innovate, and the 10% you do crazy things that seems to make no sense. But that 10%, take Ivan Hernandez, put him in a room. You say you don't have to report to the CEO. This is your budget. We're not even a news company. If you're a news company, do whatever you want. I'm exaggerating the point here, but that's how you do it. You create something out of chaos. If you want to create disruption, if you want to create innovation, you have to create chaos. And Ivan is very good at creating chaos.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Yeah, sorry. Long rant. Yeah.
Man, I love everything you're saying, because it's so it's exactly very, very meaningful. And one of the things that you mentioned is the element of size and scale. One of the things that I think is very important for companies and for founders or for top executives to ask themselves when every time they're planning to scale and get bigger and bigger and bigger, is they need to ask themselves, why are we getting bigger? Are we getting bigger to get bigger, or are we getting bigger to get better? Because if we are getting bigger to get better, awesome, go for it. This is going to be good in the future, and probably this is going to work out really, really well for you. But if you're just getting bigger just to get bigger, out of ego, out of trying to just scale, this is going to mean a lot of headaches in the future, because again, every time you grow, there is a new sense of problems, and there's a new things that you need to deal with. And if you're not ready to scale up your capacity to deal with all these issues, you're going to suffer. Time and time again, I see companies that when they were 15, 20 people, they were fantastic. Today they are 100 people, and they are not able to deal with the new reality that they have due to that scale, because they were not able to scale the processes and the way they work, like when they were 15, 20 people, to what they are now. So
it's actually very hard, right? Let's be honest, it's very hard to do that, right? I mean,
but the problem is that
what I'm trying to say is that you and me look at all these startups, and we work with startups and advise them. It's great, and I used to be in a startup, so I know, we're like, when you're 5 and 10, people are passionate, and everybody is there for the, there we have maybe a common goal, common passion, common, we have this kind of sense of, cohesiveness, that we work together and we're going to make something big and we're going to actually change the world. And then when you're 5,000 people, it's actually impossible. Let's be also honest. It's also human behavior. You don't attract the same type of people when you're 20. If you, Ivan, wants to join my company when I'm 5, you're not the same Ivan that if you, Ivan, wants to join my company from 5,000. And by definition, this is why it's hard. Actually, this is why it is hard. This is why so many big corporations try to find ways to kind of keep the pace up, because it is hard. It is human behavior. Like, we don't like change. As humans, we don't like change. We like a certain sense of comfort. I mean, we all say that, okay, we have to change. So we do change. I think Ivan and myself do change, we try to adapt ourselves, but we cannot do that like 24 hours a day. There are moments in our lives maybe that are not related to work, but we don't like change. We're like, we like to go back to a home we like, or we get to. So that's human behavior. And if you replicate that human behavior to a large set of people, meaning a company, that's very hard. This is why there are ways. I mentioned one, this kind of innovation centers creates disruption and chaos, but it is actually very hard. It's easier to do when you're a small company. It's much harder to do when you're a large one. So I just wanted to make it's a reality check. I mean, it's hard.
It is hard. Yeah, but again, as we were mentioning, change is hard, change is scary, but it has to get done because the world keeps changing. And I guess in that note we can start wrapping up because we're about time.
Yeah.
So once again, just to wrap it up and summarize what we've been talking about. Again, you need to understand that innovation is not just about new ideas, but innovation is about ideas and execution. So it's not just about having cool ideas, but it's actually getting those ideas done.
Get it
That's
done.
number one. Number two is developing this sense of urgency, because time and time again I see people in this analysis paralysis phase, planning, waiting, hoping, and having conf calls, and not really moving forward. So this is something that also I think it's important to understand. And one thing that we haven't mentioned today, but you mentioned on your speech, and I was just like I could see the beam of light, the skies opening, and just the light going straight all the way to you going, oh. There was one point that you mentioned in your presentation about average, it's over.
Yeah.
And this is something that I think also organizations and entrepreneurs and startups, everybody needs to understand. And I don't know if you want to elaborate on that point, because I love that.
Yeah, we're running out of time, and we'll do it. But yeah, meaning that not only with the pace of innovation that we mentioned here, not only with the mindset change that Ivan is mentioning here as well. The other reality is when you add all this together to make it simple, it means that there are not as, if computers become, if Ivan was a computer 50 years ago, and Ivan is now not a computer anymore, it doesn't compete with the computer, at least in calculations. What about in 10 years? So what I'm trying to say here is that the kind of people that will thrive in this world are people that have these qualities of adaptability, of being able to think laterally, of being able to think emotionally, stuff that basically computers cannot do. In that sense, average is over. You cannot. It will be very hard if you do something that is very simple, or a task that is either simple, menial, or a task that can be broken up into pieces that are simple and menial. There is a chance that it will be replaced by a computer. It doesn't mean that the jobs are going to disappear, because a lot of people misunderstood what I was trying to say. There's not like, oh, there are not going to be no more jobs. I'm saying exactly like Ivan is saying, jobs are changing. We are changing. The industry is changing. You also have to change, and this will be maybe a theme for another show, because it's a long discussion. This is all about. It includes the debate about education. What do we teach our kids to learn? Do we teach them to do something that could be replicated by a computer? Do we teach them how to actually tame that computer? Do we teach them ways to actually open and have this adaptability to change, constant change? It's just a reality. As Ivan said, it's a reality. Things change extremely fast. If you're average, you will not be able to keep up. You have to find ways not to be average. And average, by the way, doesn't mean you're dumb, but this is not about intelligence. It's about being able to see stuff and say, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this. Oh, I'm going to fail here, I'm going to start again, I'm going to fail here. This is what average is, not sitting down and waiting in a meeting that somebody calls it off.
Amen.
Thank you. I think we have to wrap up, because we both, although could rant for hours about this. So you and me, Ivan, will be at another conference next week in Poland, in your home country, in Krakow, which is a great city to be in for the summer, because trust me, here in London, summer is still like a theory. So we'll probably do a show from there. We'll attempt to do one at least. If not, like last week, we'll do a small update. It's called Bitspiration. You can find the website bitspiration.com. And if you're around, it's a great conference. It's a festival, actually. There'll be music. There'll be speakers. There'll be a lot of stuff going around. If you're around, please do not hesitate to contact us to find us. I'm the tall guy. Ivan is the guy with flying on a trapeze, so you can actually find us pretty easily. And on that, Ivan, I'm going to see you next week, right?
Yeah, see you next week. Once again, thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in to the Digital Loop, and until next time.
Until next time. Bye, guys.